100%.
Music.
100%.
Music.
100% music. 100% music.
And we're
back. How's everybody doing?
How's everybody doing? You guys recovered after a big Speed the movie / Margarita Day?
Speed the movie / Margarita Day, the 12th anniversary. And we're back on the horse drinking margaritas.
Yeah, we
a few
never
days
stopped.
Later.
Yeah, you just don't stop. That's the only way to survive post Sprarg is you just keep drinking a margarita.
You just don't get off the
every
bus.
day.
For the fans at home, Austin just referred to it as Sprarg.
Oh yeah, sorry.
When do you guys want to kind of give a little details as to what
Austin, explain what Sprarg is.
Sprarg is a annual tradition, best holiday of the year, where you combine National Margarita Day with the film Speed, the 1994 action film starring Keanu Reeves. And we've been doing it. This was our 12th year. We just celebrated our 12th year over the weekend. The name Sprarg comes from the combination of speed and marg with an extra R, because when we came up with it, we were Sprarged. So Sprarg was born.
What happened was National Margarita Day is already one of those made-up holidays, much as Sprarg Day is. We celebrated National Margarita Day in 2012, one evening, and then after a full day of margarita drinking, we decided to put on the movie Speed just because it sounded like a good idea at the time. 12 years later, we're going stronger than ever. By coincidence, one of our favorite independent movie theaters, Vidiots, which is a nonprofit that celebrates physical media, DVDs, VHS, Blu-rays, and has an amazing rental collection right down the street in Eagle Rock, just happened to be showing Speed on the big screen. And for lack of a better term, we hijacked their screening with our group.
I'd say we kept it above 50.
We kept it above. It was a rowdy screening.
Shout out to Vidiots for just
Tolerating.
being awesome. They gave Al a shout out when they were introducing the movie in the beginning, and what an awesome theater establishment. Like, that was just perfect. And just, honestly, I think for all of us, the last time we would have seen Speed on a big screen was when we were like children.
1994 when the film came out.
I was
5.
five.
I didn't see it. Yeah. Sold out screening, 250-ish people, and everybody was into the film. We met a lot of other fellow Speed freaks.
There were a lot of Speed freaks, and turns out there's a common thread between indie rock bands and being a freak for the movie Speed. Ran into some of the local natives folks. Shout out to that great band. And
by local natives, not just like natives of Eagle Rock, but the band.
Serious respect, because I really liked their music. And then when I found out that they liked the movie Speed, well, they went to a whole different tier for me. I'll be honest.
Shout out to the hosts of While You Were Streaming and 50 Mile Per Hour podcast, which is an ongoing series about the making of Speed, the movie.
And I want to ask this, just because I think maybe our listeners are like, okay, I think I understand it. You're drinking margaritas and you're watching the movie Speed, but could you go into some details kind of like the drinking games that it entails?
I know that the sexual tension, if there's any sexual tension
Drink
between Sandra
anytime
and
you
Keanu.
feel sexual tension, yeah.
You see the odometer.
Between anyone, I guess.
Yeah.
Pop quiz?
Drink
quiz,
anytime you hear the
Wildcat.
phrase pop quiz. Drink anytime you hear the phrase Wildcat. I'll say in the theater of 250 people, it was really fun to see our group in the front 2 rows raising a beer every time one of the rules took place.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, so many people came up and wanted to know about all the rules.
Yeah.
It was a great time, and I think if anyone's interested in participating in Sprarg in 2025, we'll send out the submission sheet soon. You can sign up, get your deposit in now.
Yes. We'll put the link for you to send your deposit. Please write us a big check.
Yeah, it was a wonderful time.
So we did that, and we just got back from South by Southwest.
And that was just more margaritas.
More margaritas.
Yeah, we were just sweating out margaritas still.
Yep.
Explain South by Southwest for, I feel like a good amount of people, especially those who follow Hembree and know about the music and the music world, know of the South by Southwest Festival. For those who don't know, can you describe it in any way?
As a music industry professional for several years now, I've started to contemplate if it's a gigantic scam. But
what's it stand for? Does anyone know?
No.
Scam by
Scam by Scam West.
Yeah. But
Do you
on the positive note for South by Southwest, we have been one of the fortunate bands who have had amazing South by Southwest experiences. We got signed to our first record label at South by Southwest. We got a European booking agent at South by Southwest. Rolling Stone said really nice things about us after seeing us there. NPR. So we actually were very fortunate that we went down there hoping to catch the industry break, and we, in a way, sort of did catch some of that. So in essence, though, it's a music festival and
now
conference.
Tech. Yeah, now tech and
there's
movies.
film.
Yep.
Bands
and
from
comedy.
all over the world. And in some ways, when I'm not being so pessimistic, it's one of the coolest things in the world and one of the most fun things to be a part of, because like one night we just stumbled over to the British Embassy and there was a guy playing in like a dog mask, and it was a really fun, like wild show that you wouldn't see just walking around, if you weren't at South by Southwest.
The difference between South by Southwest and other music festivals is it's all throughout the city. Like at a festival, it's like there's this like designated area. There's a couple stages, and and bands take turns on the stages. This is mostly in venues. There's outdoor stages. It's everywhere you can have music. There's
Clothing
music everywhere.
shops.
Yeah, it can be
Hotel lobbies.
anywhere. Like we played at Aviator Nation and got some swag.
nice swag.
Yeah, thank you,
He knew what he
Aviator
was
Nation.
doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we so it's kind of unique in that sense where it's very urban, it's very ingrained in the city, and over the years it's kind of changed a little bit where it was very music centered to begin with, and we've kind of seen it evolve to more tech and film, I kind of feel like.
It was fruitful, and I would say that it's something that every band should experience. I will say at least one time.
Oh, I don't know. At this point, I wouldn't wish it upon you.
Okay.
Well, we played 7 shows in 5 days.
Yep.
It's a struggle.
It is a struggle. No,
It's hard. It's a
I was being
nightmare.
negative as well.
Yeah,
It's a blast. I love going
but
down.
it's so fun though, and I think every time we've really had really good experiences. I actually just thought of this. There's 2 things that we've talked about that you guys have done 12 times: Sprarg
And
South by Southwest. You have done an equal
One
amount
is
of times.
significantly more. Well, that's the same amount of margaritas at both.
Same amount of margaritas, and I will say that I consider myself a professional South by Southwester at this point.
I would say
I feel confident, and I know how to maintain my energy level, no drugs included, and I know how to maintain my sanity for the most part. The highlight for me this year was definitely we played a show at Soho in Austin, Texas for South by, and then the boys had an acoustic show to go to, and I was like, guys, I think I'm going to set this one out. No cajon performance for me. And there was a pool wide open because
At the Soho house.
No one ever swims at the Soho pool because they think you're too cool to get in the actual water. So I went and bought a $80 pair of swim trunks next door and got in that pool, and boy, was it worth it. Let me tell you.
I'll tell you
I
what,
would have loved to have gone swimming.
the energy in the van as we were driving away to go perform an acoustic set as you were getting into the pool might have been an all-time low for the band.
we were sad, but then Austin did point out that he has lugged drums up a lot of bad load-ins over the years, and you know what? After some time away from it, I think you deserve
I
that.
had
swim.
45 minutes of solo time. It was nice to have.
You've put in your time. Every year we reward one Hembree member with a solo swim.
Soho
You get
swim.
an hour of solo time.
a
once
solo
year.
Soho.
Yeah.
We've got a new single coming out on April 26th.
Anyone who caught us on this last tour, we made the actually bold move. Unreleased song, new song. We opened our set with it almost every show.
I liked it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Right out of the gates,
Right out of the
baby.
gate, hot new track.
Hot new
I'm
track.
gonna guess the inside baseball would be that we thought the song was going to be out by that point.
Yeah,
So we had spent
fair.
this time rehearsing it, working it in the set, and then to find out that due to some, behind the scenes business, the song wasn't coming out quite
The
yet.
biz can't keep up with the rock. That's just the
So
nature
we were
of
like,
it,
yeah,
you
let's
know?
just play it anyways. Who gives a shit?
Folks,
So
this is 100% music. Let's get into the background of the 100% music industry.
That's right.
We thought the song was going to be out at our record release show.
And
at
this
the single
song,
release
if you're a Hembree, you know it's a song we've been literally promoting for months. It's called Money Time Love.
Money Time Love.
I think they're getting a little tired of it.
Yeah, I know. And then there
Never even
is
heard
a
it.
reason for this.
Yes, we initially thought the song was going to be coming out probably in February. Then that got pushed to March. Then a new label came into the picture, which is great because, it funds the band and provides us with more opportunities and potentially will reach more people. But again, that takes time. If it were us, South by Southwest style, just down there taking care of everything on our own, that thing would have been up 6 months ago. But we got to let the business catch up.
Let the business, let the reels cook.
Let the reels cook, and they've been cooking.
They've been cooking for too long.
They
They're
might,
burnt,
be, they might be burnt.
They're a little burnt in the oven.
But the good news is Money Time Love is coming out April 26th.
Officially, Money Time Love.
Money
April
Time
26th.
Love. Yeah, and that's going to take us into our next segment. WTF is a pre-save.
What is a pre-save?
is a pre-save?
What is a pre-save? So you might have seen, if you get on the internet and you follow musicians and artists, every artist is begging you, please, I'll do anything. Pre-save my song.
Link in bio. Pre-save. Link in bio.
That's a good band name, by the way. Link in bio.
Oh, yeah,
Lincoln
but
Bio.
L-I-N, like spelled like Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, I said Lincoln Bio.
Or Lincoln Park.
That's a good
Lincoln.
name. With spell Abraham Lincoln
yeah.
Park.
Yeah,
Lincoln Bio.
No, like
Spelled like Lincoln Park,
the
but-
band.
but Lincoln
Chester
Bio.
Benningtons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lincoln.
Linkin Bio.
Bio.
Like LinkedIn.
Lincoln Bio.
LinkedIn
That's
Bio.
LinkedIn
That's the name
Bio.
of the album.
New album, LinkedIn Bio, coming out. A pre-save, from what we have gathered, is exactly what it sounds like. It pre-adds the song to your library, whether you're a Spotify user, an Apple Music user. And when that song comes out, it is there and it is waiting for you. And you might be like, oh, whatever. I'll go find the song on my release radar playlist, or I'll just look for you guys and type it in there. Honestly, it helps us a lot.
It helps the artist immensely.
Yes, because I don't know if you guys have heard of these things called algorithms, but they're hot right now.
If I had a dime for every time I've heard the phrase algorithm, the word algorithm in the last year.
Especially at South by Southwest, everyone's talking about the
South by Southwest is
algorithm.
just a big algorithm.
Algorithm of shit.
So all that to say, it really does tell the robots that there's some excitement around the song, and then the robots kind of mobilize, and then that tells the real humans, because there are still some real humans out there helping curate some of these playlists, that there's interest and there's buzz around the songs. Now you might be asking yourself, am I just giving my data away to a giant tech company? The answer is yes.
Probably
Oh,
yes.
Yes, and you already did.
Exactly.
Many times
So just
before.
keep
so
giving it
come
away
on.
to help Hembree out. Just hit the pre-save, check out our new album, LinkedIn Bio, and you're going to do us a solid. Money Time Love, April 26th.
Anytime I see a band now ask about, as asking their fans or followers to do a pre-save, I do go out of my way to do it. And much in
Yes.
the same way that, and I've always been guilty of this, bands a lot of times will tell you to buy tickets in advance. Hey, tickets
Yeah.
are on sale now. Help us out. Buy tickets right now. I always wait to the last minute. I'm never sure if I'm going to be able to make it to the show. I always just assume
Service fees.
service fees. I try to avoid the service fees. I'm just going to get the tickets at the door. It does actually help out bands immensely when you buy tickets in advance. Remember this, for all your favorite artists, if you buy a ticket in advance, it lets the venue know that there's actually interest in this band. They already are wanting to bring the band back before the show even happens, because they see that they have an excited fan base or an excited group of people that want to see this band. Same thing applies for Hembree.
Really, right now in live music, just the margins are so thin for air right now, and really it is like when these smaller venues or these mid-sized venues, really every ticket does count, and they are looking at that, because there's just the margin for profit on shows like this is just so incredibly small. Just when you can get that ticket count up, that makes them feel better about the show. That motivates them to put more resources in, or even like sometimes like they'll they can straight up just cancel the show sometime if ticket sales look low. And that can be really crazy, because sometimes a lot of bands will walk up hundreds of people.
Especially post-pandemic.
Yeah, post-pandemic. And it's like, and I get it, because these venues are just trying to do what they can to survive. And none of us want to lose money right now. None of us can afford to lose money. Going back to pre-saves, what's so great about that is it's a way to support artists that's totally free.
100%. That's a great point.
It takes just a couple of seconds. And I know people are always want to support their favorite artist. People care so much about that, and we appreciate that so much. And that is such an easy way to support an artist, to like their page, like their post. Don't even have to read them. Just like the post, engage. And then if you really want to engage with the post, pre-save, do all that stuff. It's free, and it only takes a couple seconds, and it really does make an absolutely huge difference.
Yeah, I think we've solved what a
I think
pre-save
we've
is
solved
and what it does.
However, just to clarify, I think it's differently worded for Apple, right?
You're
It's
going to want to pre-add that.
Pre-add.
If you're an Apple Music listener, you're going to want to pre-add that. If you're a Spotify listener, you're going to pre-save that. If you're a Tidal listener, you're going to want to
Throw it away.
Delete the app.
I think Tidal's notoriously one of the best.
pay the best.
It's best for the
that's
artists.
true.
Well, Spotify is kind of still king right now.
Well, and I've always talked about this, but I think one thing that's interesting with Spotify is that they are the only one, to my knowledge, who puts the data front facing. It is open for everyone to view, and whether
For better or worse.
Yeah, whether we like that or not, humans are drawn to numbers.
And tell them what you mean by that. The data's
You
front
can
of you.
see the play count. You can see the popularity. You can see how many monthly listeners an artist has. You can see how many streams a song has. Where Apple, in a very classy manner, they let you decide. They just say, hey, if you like this, great, listen to it. Spotify says, no, we're not doing that. All this information is going to be right there for everyone to see, and they can kind of determine, the popularity is predetermined for them.
Speaking of the numbers game, though, and this is kind of a superficial thing that you wouldn't think of perhaps as just a casual fan of bands and music in general, booking agents in venues, a lot of times when they're deciding whether or not to book a band, such as Hembree, on tour, specifically they'll get on Spotify and see how many monthly listeners a band has or how many plays a song has. For better or worse, there are several bands that we know, wonderfully talented bands who may not get as many opportunities because they have a small amount of monthly listeners. On the flip side, we've played with some bands who have had a massive amount of monthly listeners and song plays, and that doesn't translate necessarily to people actually coming to the show. So these numbers are all made up.
Well, it's a piece of the puzzle.
It's a piece of the puzzle.
And if you're just looking at that, you're kind of, it's a little lazy. It's like kind of like you're taking a shortcut there, where there's so many other metrics that should be dictating how popular your band is and how many tickets you're going to sell in a city. And that's just one piece of evidence.
Yep.
These days, a lot of artists that are kind of up and coming will ask me like, hey, what do you think we need to do to get to even just where like a band like Hembree is at? And for better or worse, the answer kind of is everything needs to be happening at once. That's making your own content and a mountain of it, being active on social media, playing good shows, some press element. Like, it's a bummer, but there's a lot of things that kind of, I think, have to be happening in order for a band to truly get to that next place. But that kind of leads me to wondering, back in the day, was it better when a record label did all this for you and they force fed you to people? Or is it better now that we as artists, to some degree, can control our own destiny? Obviously, we're reliant on catching an algorithm, hot word of today's pod. But what do you guys think? Is it better? Was it better back then, or is it better now?
I honestly kind of think we have so much creative control and so much freedom, and all of the people we've worked with, we've kind of, we work with, smaller labels and things like that. And everyone just kind of comes in and just says, like, you guys have got this, do whatever you want to do. And the fact is that we have so much artistic freedom. You hear so much about artists, like their record label controlling their image and their sound and all this stuff. We've never dealt with that before. We've just always got to do whatever we've wanted to do. And that's been really cool.
That is very cool, but don't you ever wish?
I'm gonna go opposite of Aaron.
The Atlantic Records
I would love nothing more than to label to handle everything.
You just play the drum set?
Exactly. We can still write the songs. Yeah, they might tell us to write a pop hit or whatever, but if we could just focus on music solely and not worry about the business, promotion, social media aspect, that would be
that's the
so
dream
sick.
scenario. But again, I think
We'd still do the podcast, though.
We'd still do the podcast. We'd still be doing, I
exclusively.
think, the things that a lot of bands hate to do, such as making reels or being on Instagram or whatever, we would probably do anyway because we don't mind doing that.
Yeah, we like hanging. We like drinking
it's fun.
margaritas.
Yeah, we like drinking margaritas.
But don't you just kind of wish you had some kind of slimy record label guy, and he's taking out the other label folks, or he's taking out the radio programmer, and he's going to, under the table, slide him a little money.
And a steak.
And a steak.
And a cigar.
I wish we had
I
wish we had
cocaine.
a steak guy. I wish we had a steak guy. To Austin's point, though, to be in that position where you only got to focus on music and just do the art, I think there's so many strings that would be attached to it.
That's true, because you look at NSYNC and Lou Pearlman.
That's the situation that we would find ourselves in.
I mean, have
for
you
sure.
seen these boys?
Hot young guys.
We're doing sleepovers. We're doing.
Yeah, you're right. But then you get to go on some big tours.
Big tours for sure. You're playing malls. You're Youth for
Mostly
Christ
malls.
jamborees.
Yeah, a lot of Christian youth centers.
Oh man, it's a tough call, because there's classic stories like Limp Bizkit being straight up force fed to people by payola, which is very interesting. You kind of sometimes it's horrible, but sometimes you just like, that'd be cool if our label just handed
Had
someone
so
some
much money that like, hey, I'm going to pay you, just start playing this band.
Just
that would be cool.
and we'd
That's
be like,
kind of-
I've never heard of that.
Well, that's kind of what's happening right now a little bit with these streaming
that's
places
true.
is they can dictate what gets heard. They have a lot of power to choose what's going to be popular.
true.
I think the biggest drawback to what's happening now is record labels really used to invest in artists.
Yeah, and development.
Develop artists. And they kind of, I know I've heard articles about like, where are all the new stars?
Yes.
Who are the stars today? It's like, we got like Olivia Rodrigo. And it's like, guess what? She like came from Disney. Like she was developed by somebody. And that's the thing, is like finding talented people. Like record labels
We
used to
love
go,
Olivia Rodrigo.
Oh,
by the
shit.
way.
No. She's,
Amazing.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. She's a star because she was developed and she learned how to be a star and how to make great music, how to perform. And they just kind of wait for people now to just kind of figure it out on their own. And they just try to find like who's popular on TikTok. Well, being popular on TikTok is very different than being a pop star or from being a rock band. And there's just so much like nuance and things like that of that industry that I think are being lost now and are causing a little bit of a void there.
Yeah, and it makes sense with the pandemic, because it's like, okay, well, there's no touring, so we're going to get our biggest artists from the internet. And now that touring is coming back in, and I think also like any sort of fad or trend, not that that's like Reels, TikTok, not that that's going away, but I think at some point people start to have a thirst for authenticity, and that's again not saying that someone really talented isn't on those apps posting cool stuff constantly, but I think there is like a desire for like a badass band again, or an amazing performer, or an incredible artist, or whatever. I think we saw that even down at South by Southwest. There were a lot of bands. Bands are back, baby.
There's a
there
lot
were-
of bands.
Saw some really good stuff down there.
Yeah.
Shout out a few. We got Simon Spine, our friends there were awesome. Check them out.
Font.
Out of Austin, local band we caught just by pure luck, and was a really, really cool new band. Yes, a British band. It was a saxophone.
Period.
Yeah.
Oh, period.
Saxophone, drums,
Nothing
like a
else.
sub bass on the saxophone, instrumental,
They
amazing
crushed.
stuff. And that's just the kind of stuff where you just had to have been there to experience it. And back in the day, like record labels would send people out to like clubs and like discover talent that way. And they would see artists who would perform and were like magical on stage, where now you're kind of just seeing is like who's really like magical on social media right now.
Yep.
And that's a talent. And
Oh,
that is
yes.
a very important talent, but like that doesn't mean you can do the other thing too. And you have to, I mean, as you were saying, you have to do everything. You have to be both, and so much more now. So it is a challenge.
Yeah.
The optimistic part of me still thinks at the end of the day, the cream will rise to the top.
Agreed. I think good songs will always cut
Good songs
through.
will always cut through. However, we have seen exceptions to the rule, and we've seen amazing bands fall through the cracks, in my opinion, and we've seen some just pure shit float to the top of the toilet.
Yeah, for sure. But it does make you think a little bit about the golden age of major record labels. You know, we're going to segue here into a little grunge talk.
Back in the major label era.
Peak major label, that's where you start to see a lot of negative things coming out of about major
100%.
labels, giving people awful deals and that sort of thing. But a lot of amazing bands came out of that era. And Al, you took our fans on a little run last
we
week.
threw up just for fun a little poll the other day. I was out listening to some early 90s grunge, digging into some of my faves, and we'll get to that here in a moment. Don't worry about it. But I decided to throw up a little poll, just kind of see what the temperature was on the early grunge era, the early 90s specifically. I think the most commercially successful that people think of are probably Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden,
Stone Temple Pilots.
Stone Temple Pilots is in there. I don't know.
And a lot of people came in there for Alice in Chains.
Alice in Chains, big time grunge, and obviously there's Smashing Pumpkins, I think, is in there. Screaming Trees, Melvin, Sonic Youth is thrown in the grunge era. I wrestle with that one
where you start to tread into alternative.
Yeah, that's all.
Someone brought up Pixies. I don't think they fit. That's more punk.
I
alternative
thought
punk.
so too. I thought that would alternative, and we'll talk about our definitions of alternative and grunge here in just a moment. But so we threw up a poll. Unsurprisingly, our options were of the commercially successful bands: Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, or other, which would include Smashing Pumpkins, Alice in Chains, STP, etc. Who is your favorite? Unsurprisingly, let's throw up the stats here. Nirvana came in as the clear winner with 49% of the vote. Who do you think came in second of the
Pearl
three?
Jam? What was the other one?
It was Pearl Jam. Sorry.
What was
Soundgarden.
it? Pearl Jam.
Or other. Pearl Jam. For a while, Soundgarden was up. Pearl Jam came in with 22%. Soundgarden with 15%, and then other was 14%. A couple questions for you. Do we agree with that?
I'm with the fans.
Yeah,
Nirvana.
I'm gonna go with I think it's the best,
definitely.
best songwriting and most accessible songs in a grunge package. And I mean, Kurt Cobain's suicide aside, I think they were doing it the best.
Yep. And shout out Butch Vig, legend. Yeah. Production is unbelievable.
A producer of Nevermind.
How would you guys define the genre of grunge?
Yeah, flannel.
It's like the kind of voice that's got to be in it, and the guitar kind of has that voice too, but in guitar form.
Fuzzy guitars, limited production. It's pretty streamlined lineup, and there's obviously a certain rock element that's not as fast as punk, is not as slow as maybe like metal was in certain eras, but it's this in-between tempo, and it's usually a Ford chord progression.
Tempo is a great point on that. 'Cause
Very
you're right.
mid-tempo.
I feel like that's what makes it accessible, because punk is very fast. And I feel like it's more in the pop tempo range, even though it's very different
And
from
at
pop.
times a little sludgy.
So
Yeah.
here's that's where I draw the distinction. Grunge to me errs on the side of sometimes being a little too dirgy, drony, sludgy.
Yeah.
Where you get to alternative, and I feel like that's where it becomes a little more accessible, a little more up tempo. Perhaps. But Austin, your answer was fantastic. Grunge on a Wikipedia,
A very, very reliable source.
very reliable source. This is fact checked relentlessly.
Fact check.
Grunge, sometimes referred to as the Seattle sound, fuses elements of punk rock and heavy metal. The word grunge is American slang for someone or something that is repugnant, and also for dirt, which is the vibe I get from grunge. I also get drugs. There's no genre I associate more with a specific drug than grunge, and I think of heroin. I think and there's a reason most of those singers or a lot of the band members from that era are no longer with us.
Heroin.
Heroin.
Yeah, it turns out it's not so great.
Heroin.
Hell of a drug. Hell of a drug.
I will say that I have a distinct association with grunge in my head that's like, it's definitely like some boots, and then it's some flannel, maybe tied around the waist with a t-shirt and long hair that's really kind of a disheveled look.
And greasy.
And,
unshowered look.
Yeah.
Jeans with like holes in them.
Jeans with holes in them for sure.
Yeah. Which I think that was a clear response to hair metal from the 80s. It was the exact opposite. We're not putting makeup on. We're not doing our hair up.
We're raw.
We're not
raw
wearing
dogging.
tight spandex. We're wearing loose clothes that we wear every day. They smell. It's the rebellious
And we just
answer
rock.
to hair metal. Yeah.
What would you say the most famous grunge record is then?
Never mind.
Never mind. Yeah.
See, and that's where Nevermind is almost also in my opinion, almost the most polished of grunge.
Without a doubt.
Well, that's
and
why it's
produced, and that's
Why it's also the biggest, 'cause
and that's
it's the
why
most accessible.
I think in my head, I'm like, that's almost more of an alternative record where it has melody.
Yeah, I know. It's like Green Day with punk rock, Dookie is very polished. Rob Cavallo, very, very polished production. There's always that revolt from the actual punk community or the actual grunge community that's upset that it's too polished and too good. But I don't know. I feel like Kurt Cobain's songwriting was just so good that he can kind of get away with whatever.
I agree.
It's a fantastic album. I mean,
Nevermind.
It's just a fantastic album. The songwriting is so good, and it was just like what Butch brought to it is cleaning that up just a little bit and made it more accessible. But I don't feel like it lost the soul of the music though at the same time, just because it sounded really good and you could play it on the radio because it was a high quality recording doesn't mean that it lost the spirit of the music, in my opinion.
And they were still grunge in their lifestyle with their gear choices, because I really one time tried to deep dive on what kind of pedals was Kurt Cobain using. And
I have a hunch. I know what
take
you're
a
going to
guess?
say. The Boss DS1.
Boom.
So the DS1, first, the DS1 is just an orange pedal for those listening.
It's like a starter pack.
It's It's the starter. This is the Grunge starter pack. It comes in the Grunge starter pack. One of the things I was in my research here, my rigorous research, a defining characteristic of the grunge sound was the Boss DS1 orange pedal. I think a lot of those bands use that nasty pedal.
I think they sound cool.
It sounds cool.
I think they sound really good.
Yeah.
When you use them, you can use them the right way, and they're perfect for that style of music.
You want to know when they don't sound cool? When you're in the 3rd grade and you get a Boss DS1 and the little Fender starter amp, and you can barely play, and it's just the rattiest sound you've ever heard.
Man, at least you had a Fender. Well, I had a crate.
I had a Squire.
I was running my DS1 through a crate.
I had a crate too.
Yeah.
I had a crate with 3 channels on it.
Oh, hell yeah, you did.
I just don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
And I was
NBC,
running-
ABC, PBS.
Yeah. TV shows.
Yeah, and I would just run that just one orange pedal into it. It was like, hey, I'm Kurt Cobain.
That's right.
I don't know how to play the guitar either. The lesson from that, though, is with gear. I mean, I know for people who are not really as familiar with this stuff, is that this is all very, very cheap gear that we're talking about. And I think this is so important, is like, it's really not how much your gear costs, it is how you use it.
Oh, I'm doing
Where
this
you
backwards
can-
then.
You can make a really amazing sounds with very cheap stuff.
To go back to our grunge talk, I would say that I'm not surprised by those results. PJ to me is an obvious second. I know Pearl Jam might be your absolute favorite.
I would be willing to say that Nirvana was the better band overall, better songs. However, I'm much more fascinated by Pearl Jam as they've gone longer. They've been extremely prolific. They've just gotten better and better and have such an interesting legacy that I find Pearl Jam to be the better band in the long run.
And here's what I always think about. I would give a lot of money to know if Kurt Cobain was still here, if they would still be making good music.
That's a great question.
Great question. Same way,
Yeah, I think the problem there, though, is you would have had to have pulled out the drug addiction aspect of Kurt Cobain, which then it wouldn't have ever been Kurt Cobain writing these songs.
True.
But the drugs, I think, fueled the music, unfortunately, and the drugs killed him, and so I don't think there's any way to even speculate what that would be, because the drugs were there from the beginning,
Is there a good example at the top of your head of somebody being very famous for making music on drugs and then like getting clean and making
Nine Inch Nails, Trent Reznor.
There we go.
He's
Okay.
gotten better and better.
Yeah, and he does the soundtrack stuff.
Yeah.
So there we go. There's a good example that who knows, maybe he could have
John Mayer.
evolved. Yeah, he could have evolved and made better stuff, and we'll never know. And that's kind of part of the mystery.
Going back and listening to all the debut albums of all these bands, no other band, in my opinion, came out more fully formed than Pearl Jam.
Oh, without a doubt. Because
When you think
Bleach is not.
Bleach is rough.
It's rough. Any of the bands, the first couple Soundgarden records, in my opinion, are just production-wise just unlistenable. Obviously, they got better. Smashing Pumpkins, the first Pumpkins record, that's fine.
They had to get Butch too.
Hell yeah. So Pearl Jam, more
BV.
than any of the other ones, came out fully formed, even though their debut record 10 is not my favorite Pearl Jam record. But
Yeah, but was that also maybe label work there? Like they had demos that we just don't know about, and then the label caught them before they put out a proper album?
that was a wild one where it was the whole band minus Eddie Vedder. They had written the songs with no vocals. The songs were done, and then Eddie Vedder came in and put vocals over the songs.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That is really
So
cool.
was he
honestly.
in Temple of the Dog before?
Yeah, that Temple of the Dog was prior to Pearl Jam.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so the songs were basically done with a cassette, all on demoed out on a cassette, and then Eddie Vedder came in and just put vocals over them.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
honestly.
that's
I
wild.
cannot believe that worked.
Yeah.
because as you know,
Normally it does not.
I mean, we've made songs that way before. Like sometimes, like if I write a song, like I want to let Isaac do his thing because he's
Yeah.
going to be the one who's singing it whenever we do that. But that's generally kind of like writing the song backwards.
Yes.
Or like I know from the Eagles documentary that the Hotel California, they wrote the guitar part for that.
Yeah.
And then they put the vocals on later. So that has worked. in the history, but that just seems, as someone who writes music, that just seems so crazy.
It works for Tool.
Yeah. Well, that's just a down. Now we're not gonna go there.
And stay tuned for our next segment, Talking Tool.
Talking Tool. That's next week.
But yeah, I guess we could talk about musicians who certainly did not write music that way. With another poll that we did that's kind of cooking right now, and that's the Beatles poll that we did.
It is a Beatles poll.
Your favorite Beatle?
Yeah, your favorite Beatle.
Alex
What got me thinking on this one was
What are the numbers at? Well, let's get to the numbers.
Get the
This is a
numbers.
poll we did on social media to see what who everyone's favorite Beatle was, and it was pretty lopsided.
And it's specifically, I think the what needs to be remembered here is the poll was geared towards the Beatles' existence, 1960 to 1970. Who was your favorite Beatle regarding like what their contribution was, what they did for the band? You know, if we're talking about post 1970, post the Beatles, I think we could make different arguments for who's done the most work here. So who's your favorite Beatle? Who do you think was the clear winner?
Oh, I know the answer.
Okay.
Paul.
Oh yeah,
Paul
Austin's
McCartney.
not on Instagram, so he can guess.
Respect,
Yeah,
Austin.
I think the most accessible Beatles, Paul. So that's going to be the broad
Okay, so
stroke
51% of the tens of thousands of responses we received. Paul McCartney was the clear winner. The second favorite Beatle according to the Hembree heads out there, the Hembreos.
Austin, you want to guess since Eric and I know?
crowd vote. I would say Ringo. I mean, George would be my number one, but I feel like maybe George number two.
It was George.
Hey, okay.
George.
I think he's had people now, hold him up to
With
a higher standard as they should.
33% of the vote. So Paul, George,
And
number
then,
three.
Then Ringo.
Ringo with 9%.
John's last.
Yeah.
You
okay.
nailed it.
Let's go backwards. Why is John coming in as the lowest?
Let me take John here because I'm going to say that John artistically is my favorite Beatle.
Okay.
I like his songs the most. Like that's the surface level thing is I think he has the best songs. I think he has one of the coolest voices in the history of pop music. Like I just love that kind of like nasally voice. And then obviously when they all sing together, it's just outstanding. And then if you do go beyond that, his solo work I think is absolutely phenomenal. I think he pushed the boundaries the most as an artist. With that said though, yes, I understand the drawbacks of his personal life and the stories about him they make him very, very unlikable. And I also think that this poll, I would wonder how the results would look before the Get Back documentary came out.
That's a great
which
question.
Makes Paul look
The hero almost.
really, really good in that too. And I think he's like the engine of the Beatles, and that's like I really appreciate that. But I do want to speak up for John. Is if we're going from purely artistic standpoint, he's always going to be my number one.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a feeling most people on a poll like that are not responding just to the songwriting or the songs. It's the figure in general. So that makes sense that Paul's number one by a long shot.
Can I give one more point to John? After the Get Back documentary, he is fucking hilarious.
Oh, he's so
he's very
funny.
Oh my
funny.
God, he
Very
could have been
funny.
he could have been a comedian.
When
He's so quick.
At the beginning of the documentary where he's clearly very disinterested in the whole process of
And-
even being there.
And drugged
And on
out.
heroin.
drugged out.
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely much on
It
heroin.
turns out,
So was he the first grunge artist?
yeah, he might be the
Oh,
first
for
grunge artist.
sure. Greasy hair, heroin addict.
Well,
absolutely.
They say that Butch Vig had to convince Kurt Cobain to double his vocals because John Lennon did it.
That's
Oh.
cool.
Yes.
No,
you go.
Kurt Cobain was a huge John Lennon fan. Absolutely.
Yeah, but it is interesting because I think Paul wins for me because he's just so good with melody. And he's so prolific. I mean, they all really were. I mean, aside from our guy Ringo, who might be the coolest guy in the band to hang out with.
Oh, he's the one I'd
actually.
want to hang out with the most, for sure.
For sure.
Ringo's your best friend, but you don't want to be in a band.
Yeah,
with
yeah. But it was
Well,
really...
wait, I would want Ringo to be your drummer,
Yeah.
but you don't want Ringo writing the songs.
Yeah. But it was really sweet how in the documentary how George helped him kind of like work on
yeah.
Octopus's
Yeah,
Garden.
great moment.
And then he comes in, he's like, "Have you heard the one about the octopus?" He knew what what the
for
deal
sure.
was for sure.
I
but
think historically, and I think there's been a reevaluation of John Lennon as a person that has affected his legacy musically also for some reason. But 20 years ago, I remember really diving into the Beatles for the first time, and the arguments were always who was better, Paul or John. And a lot were for John, and to see like in this poll, John to be ranked so low is an indicator.
John's
that
at a low point right
he's
now.
at an all-time low. I hate
Yeah.
to say it.
Yeah, he is. No, and I understand it. I totally get that and why
Yeah.
that is. But it is funny. I love George a lot too but if we're not counting their solo careers,
I think that's
if you're
almost an entirely different conversation.
If you're going to count solo careers, I would say then George really jumps up quite a bit. But if you're talking about their time in the band, he doesn't touch.
Poor George, they were
touch John.
gatekeeping him.
They were gatekeeping him.
They wouldn't let he'd bring in amazing. All things must pass, and they'd be like, "Yeah, George, shut up."
No, but honestly, when you're doing what they're doing, I think it worked out the right way.
Wait, you're saying I'm doing what they're doing?
Yeah, when you specifically were doing,
you guys bring me songs, I shut you
Paul
down.
and John were doing, and all I want to do is just make my Maxwell Silver Hammer and Octopus Garden, and you just won't let me do it.
Oh my gosh, I just think Paul's got probably the worst Beatles songs though. I do. Like he's got a range. Like his taste is like. He just makes whatever he wants, which is really cool about him, where he has some of the best ones. But I think the biggest stinkers kind of come from Paul too, whereas John is just, his shit is just so cool.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just so different.
You could see when he started to care in the documentary.
Oh, yes.
How incredibly talented he was.
Oh, yeah.
And the energy of the two of them together, my God.
It's tough because I do think if I had to name my favorite Beatles songs, Paul McCartney wrote them. If I had to name my worst Beatles songs, Paul McCartney wrote them.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, I still think Paul was my favorite Beatle overall, but I understand his weaknesses.
He takes a lot of shots.
He takes a lot of shots, and you don't always make them.
Yeah, but even his worst song is still better than
100%.
most songs in the world.
Yeah.
So
What did John called his music grandma music, I think. John's hilarious. I'm sorry. He is, he'd be, but no, in this day and age, he's totally canceled, and I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But yeah, so what? So we have is that all we have to say about the Beatles
I think
today,
we covered
boys?
the Beatles today.
Well, I think everyone covered the Beatles about like 40 years ago.
Oh yeah.
But it's a fun topic to bring back because people are so passionate about it.
I thought it was cool too that Alex mentioned the stereo remasters because they do sound so good, and the ones that did George Harrison's son remix.
No, it's Giles Martin.
Giles Martin.
George Martin's son.
George Martin's son.
And just to
yes.
clarify, they're not remastered, they're remixed.
Remixed.
Just
Very different thing.
clarification.
Was there not I thought there was a remastering in like 2009 and then there was like an actual remix.
They did like basically the whole catalog remastered. Yeah, like the early
Multiple
or late
times
aughts.
they've remastered.
Yeah. But the newest versions are all remixed.
Those sound frighteningly good.
Yes, and that's where they took the technology that Peter Jackson came up with for that Get Back documentary, and they use that to break out and create more tracks out of an 8-track recording. So they were able to isolate the snare, the kick, the vocal. They pulled everything out and then they remixed them. Honestly, if you listen to them, they're not like drastically different, which is obviously the point. But man, they sound phenomenal.
They sound
headphones off of a vinyl off the remixed are like.
It sounds like the best indie band you've ever heard in your life.
It sounds like a Tame Impala. It sounds like Tame Impala or something.
And I think it's necessary. Like when you sometimes listen to those old mixes that are just like mono mixes or they're just like on 8 tracks and stuff like that, they need to be remixed. They sound so much better. This is the way they should be heard.
I understand that.
And I'm good with that.
Totally. And I do understand an argument from a purist who's like, well, that's not how the Beatles meant for them to be, or that's not how the Beatles heard them in the studio. Well, if the Beatles had the technology, there's no doubt in your mind that they would want them mixed a specific way across the stereo spectrum.
And that was also the point, is that Giles came out and said they're trying to recreate what they were hearing in the studio.
Yes. Cool.
Because taking what you're hearing in that mix and then putting it down onto a vinyl or a cassette and losing all that quality is different than what they were hearing in the room. Even if it was an 8-track recording playback, they were hearing the clarity that we now get to hear, which...
All that to say, we like the Beatles. Link is in the bio.
Check
out the Beatles if you haven't checked them out before.
You should check out the Beatles.
No, you should check out the remixes, and even if you're interested in that, compare them, listen to those, and listen to the original ones, and you will learn a lot about the history of recording music, essentially.
I'll give you another example, and this is a wild one, but to go back to our grunge talk, Pearl Jam's 10 is a record I can't listen to because the production makes it hard for me to appreciate. Even though at the time I realized the songs were cool, they were great, whatever. It sounds very dated, for lack of a better word. Within the last 10 years, Brendan O'Brien did a remixed version of Pearl Jam 10, It sounds more modernized. It's a little drier. The drums are more in your face, and I think it sounds incredible. I've talked to some friends though who are purists, and they're like, "Why would you listen to that? That's not the record."
They want
I'm
that reverb
I'm like,
on the snare.
It's like
Just
this sounds
ringing.
like a modern record now.
The thing is, the old ones are still there.
Yeah,
You
totally.
can enjoy the old ones and the new ones, and especially with some of these artists that are like alive and with us, they're making these creative decisions to do that themselves. Or we could, if you really want to open up a can of worms here,
Open it up.
Taylor Swift re-recording her old music.
Can I be honest? I thought you were going to switch to cinema and start talking about George Lucas adding CGI.
No, I was originally, and I changed paths on that because that was my first thought. Where I'm like, okay, the problem with that is those movies look worse.
Yeah,
It looks
that's
so
what I
they
was
look
thinking the
worse.
same.
I thought you were,
I was thinking of
going George Lucas
No,
for
no,
sure.
no,
I was
no,
thinking
I
of
was-
Blade Runner and how many times it's been redone over, and it's like, well, you can still go back and watch the original cut if you want.
But the thing is, I think if you do that, it has to be like pretty much just no question better. And I
So
feel like
you like the Star Wars cut, the new cuts better?
oh God, no.
Something about the
They're
new cuts
travesties.
make me feel like being in a McDonald's playland
Yeah.
when I'm like 8 years old. I don't even know why, but the cantina scene where they added all that CGI. in.
CGI.
And
yeah.
there's a scene I think they've added in the first one where Han Solo meets Jabba the Hutt early,
Yeah.
and he walks over his tail, but it's just like like an animated.
It looks
I think it's
so
in the
bad.
second
Is it the
one.
second one?
but,
Oh.
yeah,
So the
Empire
difference,
Strikes Back.
the difference is that those made it worse, and everyone knew they made it worse. And I feel like these new versions of these songs, because you're taking all the elements that are already there.
Yeah.
You're not adding
You're not
anything
adding
new.
anything. Good
That's the
point.
problem. Is they were adding new things into those, and these ones they're just taking what's there and just using technology just to make it more pleasing to listen to. And I think that that's amazing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I guess, yeah. So I was saying, like, with the Taylor Swift stuff, though, is what she's done. The difference is she's actually literally re-recorded all of her music, just like track by track, and made brand new versions of her songs. And that is completely different. Like, we're just talking about taking what's already there and mixing it differently. Like, what she did was she completely remade her songs from
Also,
scratch.
shout out to Taylor for doing that. Could you guys imagine if we had to, and she has a much larger catalog than we do. Can you imagine if we had to go and re-record every single Hembree song in the
yeah, the
entire
first three
catalog?
records.
The first three
while,
records?
and also, yeah, to give credit to Taylor, while also putting out new records simultaneously
And touring.
and
yeah, it's
touring
wild.
while you're re-recording your old stuff. Yeah.
Friends.
Would you guys ever want to do that? Like, would that be inspiring or?
I guess the difference here, though, is Taylor knows that at the end of the day, she's going to make $1 billion
Yes.
off of that re-record.
We might make
If
10.
we have to re-record a 20
might
minutes of a
make-
podcast or an album, we lose money somehow. So I think a big difference is, yeah, she's motivated probably a little bit by creativity and her artistic stand on it. But at the end of the day, it's a money thing.
Business
She's
point.
going to make way more money. She's going to own the masters forever now. So,
But
yeah,
if we
I
recorded
think I
House
would
on
do
Fire,
it.
we would make so much money.
If we did record House on Fire, we knew that we would make a bunch of money. Yeah, dude. Sign me up.
I don't think we can fail now to mention a lot of bands from the even beyond, but specifically I'm thinking of some bands from the 90s, early 2000s are re-recording their debut records. I have a hunch it's probably to get out of an old contract deal or to own the masters. The latest one being Incubus has re-recorded Morning View?
Morning View. Yes.
Arguably to its detriment.
I mean, it's money. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they're like, they got the song rights back, but they don't own the masters. They don't own those recordings. The label still does, but now they can re-record it. Now they do have the permission to re-record. Yeah, they say they're doing it because they want to pay tribute because it's the 20th anniversary. I don't even know what it would be. Would it be 20?
It'd be 20,
25.
25 years since Morning View? How old are we?
I don't know.
2000?
I think it was-
99?
No, it was 2000 because it came out 9/11 is like the year it came out. So
I say, is this the first like
20th,
is
25th.
Is this the first episode of 100% Music that was like literally 100% music?
Yeah, I think so. It seems like we've stumbled onto something good. Like we actually know what we're talking
We should
about.
talk about music more often. No, it came out October 22, 2001. Morning View did.
Yeah.
So this is just a weird year for them to re-release it.
Yeah.
They're re-recording it
22nd,
because
third.
COVID. They were going to do it during COVID. COVID hit. It would have been the 20th.
It's like the Olympics,
Yeah.
So I think they postponed the release, but it's the
which
20th.
a lot of people compare this record to the Olympics.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just an
yeah.
all-time great.
It was the Olympics of grunge, post-grunge.
That's right.
Guys, I'm getting excited for my record of the week because I feel like everything we have talked about today is just so perfect.
Okay.
For the record, I'm
Record
are
of
we,
the
are
week,
we ready to jump into
I think
this?
record of the week.
Record
So
of the week,
which
baby.
Incubus record is it going to be, Eric?
Well, here's what I was thinking. I want to do this one a little bit different this time. Is what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys 3 clues, and I want you to guess. See if you can guess what my record is. Okay. All right, here we go.
3 clues. Record of the week.
First clue. I thought this one was perfect because it came out the same year that Speed did, and it will be celebrating its 30th anniversary soon.
Okay.
1994.
94?
So we got.
All right, so here, let me give
30th anniversary.
I'll give you more clues. It features a cover that is more famous than the original. And then the third clue is we talked about debut records and all-time great debut records. This is considered one of the greatest debut records of all time.
I know it.
And then if you don't get it after this one final
It's
clue.
Jeff Buckley.
It's Jeff Buckley's Grace.
Okay.
Not only is it the greatest, potentially one of the greatest debut albums,
Is
it's
he
also one of
grunge?
the... I was going to bring it up, but I didn't want to spoil my
nice.
album of the week. It's also one of the greatest swan songs of all time, too, because he only made one album because he passed away shortly after it came out. And that's a great question because we were talking about this era of music. And I listened to this album today because I knew I was going to talk about it. And it's a great question because it's pretty clean compared to grunge. Like there's acoustic guitar, organ, a lot of organ on the album too.
Organ was hot in the 90s.
Yep, it's earthy. It's earthy, but I wouldn't call it grungy. And I think what's so fascinating about this album to me is the context of the album. Is where we talked about earlier, where we talked about, Nirvana had the benefit really of getting to go out on top, and all these other bands had these long careers. Jeff Buckley only had one album. He only put out, I believe, a dozen songs in his whole career as an artist, and that is all we have to judge his entire career by. And I think when I'm listening to it, it has the emotional depth and the power of an entire career of music just in one album. It has so much emotional range. The vocal performances in it are out of this world. I mean, Freddie Mercury, Aretha Franklin, Marvin Gaye, Whitney Houston, Jeff Buckley, he's right up there, and he only did 12 songs.
I think because he passed people, he had only made one record, people kind of forget about how good he was, but he was phenomenal.
Small sample size.
Yeah, 12 songs.
And the one record by default has also made him a bit of a legend too.
Yes.
It's of what could have been, but also what a testament to his talent that this was what he left us with. I remember vividly. I can't remember what band we were in. It might have been Hembree. No, it would have been Archipel and the Exports. But I remember being in the back of the van and someone was listening to Eternal Life up front, and I woke up from one of those van naps to ask who the song was because I had never heard Jeff Buckley before. I was
rumbling
late to
down
it.
the road.
And I was like, this song, what band is this? Assuming it was a new band. It was Jeff Buckley from 30 years ago. And Eternal Life still, it holds up so well. It's just a killer rock song.
I think of the songs on the album Grace, the title track Grace, I think is one of the greatest rock songs ever written.
Yeah.
His vocal performance, a very underrated guitar player too, very, very good guitar player.
And was he also in the 27 Club?
Yes, he was. Yes, he died. He drowned in the Mississippi River outside of Memphis when he was playing a festival there, I believe. And the other crazy thing was his dad was a famous singer named Tim Buckley, and he died around the same age, I believe. He was about 30 when he passed away from a drug overdose. So it's just this crazy lore to him, and it kind of enhances the musical experience a little bit, but also every time I listen to the album, it kind of breaks my heart because you just think about what else could he have done? I think about, here's a good thought that I was thinking about today is 1994, a few months before this, Radiohead puts out their debut album, Pablo Honey, and were kind of considered contemporaries of their time, Tom York and Jeff Buckley. Grace blows Pablo Honey out of the water. It's such a better album. It's so much, the songwriting's better, the lyrics are better, the vocal performance is unlike anything. And
that just goes to show you also, people should be given the chance to make more than one record because look at Radiohead, because look where when they followed it up, it's then they turned into one of the best rock bands of all time.
Because I think by OK Computer, they're like a better band, but like they had 3 albums to do that. So like, what could have Jeff Buckley done by album 3?
And that's a big topic today, I guess.
Yes, it is.
The frailty of life here on the 100% Music podcast. But I mean, we're talking about what Kurt Cobain would have made and what Jeff Buckley would have made. It's very interesting. I don't know if any of our fans want to hear it, but we're having a great conversation. And would you pull that up again here, Jeff Buckley, on Google?
Yep.
One thing that's interesting here, Wikipedia, that's our main source, that's our producer wiki. Genre for Jeff Buckley is rock, alternative rock, jazz, blues, folk, and folk music.
Do you hear all those genres in his debut?
I mean, it's kind of funny. Like he has some songs in there that almost sound like medieval, like minstrel kind of stuff in there.
Yeah, definitely.
So very folky. His dad was a jazz folk singer. The structures of his songs are very complex, almost like jazz songs. He said something in an interview that he would dream his songs. Like his songs would a lot of the times come from dreams. And you listen to it, and there is this dreamlike quality where you're kind of weaving in and out of sections very seamlessly. Like the structures are very interesting and very complicated for rock music. It is almost a little bit proggy, but the production, though, is so clean and simple and earthy that it kind of distracts you from that. And it's a very, very cool blend. It's very, very unique. Then it really holds up really well today. It's a great sounding album. I listened to it today. I would highly recommend anybody who hasn't listened to it for a while, listen to it again, because it's just fantastic production, fantastic songwriting. I mean, world-class vocals.
The producer is Andy Wallace, a massive 90s rock producer. Look at that. We got Nirvana. We got L7.
Rage Against the Machine.
Rage is a big one.
How would you, not to jump subjects here, well, let's wrap up the...
Great record of the week.
Yeah,
Great record of the week.
Thank you.
Have there been remasters or remixes? I'm surely there's been like deluxe remaster editions or...
Yes, I believe so. I believe there is. It was remastered at some point in time. I can't tell you the date exactly. I have to go look that up. But yeah, it had been. I'm pretty sure it had been remastered. And I believe on Spotify there's a version that even has an additional song on it too that wasn't on the original one. Because I was listening to it today and I was like done with the album, and there's like another song came on at the end. I was like, wait, what the hell? What is this? It was a good song, but hard to mess with perfection. To me, I really feel like it's like basically a perfect album, and he did it on his first try, which is just
crazy,
pretty cool. I mean, another fun fact is he was in the band before. He was playing lead guitar and not singing. So it was just like, I feel like one of the guys in that band just being like, what the fuck, Jeff?
Andy Wallace is quite the producer / mixer. He's worked on a lot of Limp Bizkit, Tonic, one of our favorites in the van.
Well, that's what's wild with being a lifetime producer and music trends. I don't know if when he's doing them, if he's like, oh, yeah, my manager wants me to produce this Limp Bizkit band, or is he like, cool, I love this music, because that's
I
like
can make this cool.
And I saw how, I think I knew where you were going here for a second, of like where does Rage Against the Machine fall in all?
I was
going to
ask about this is perhaps a different conversation, but getting back to that grunge alternative.
You can't quit it.
I can't quit it, man. It's like, how do you define Rage Against the Machine at the same time? Like, that's not grunge.
No.
Funk, just rock,
funk rock.
No, it's almost like it's like hip hop. It's like closer to like the Beastie Boys than to Pearl Jam or Nirvana. In my opinion.
But also Rage is the heaviest music.
So
like,
heavy,
instrumentally.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it's the prerequisite to new metal.
Yeah, but it's before Limp Bizkit.
I wouldn't call them metal.
No,
I mean, I think their first album gets categorized as metal a lot of times. Yeah, I mean, the first album's like heavy.
And we could talk about this we can save this for another podcast, because I know we're wanting to do Battle of the Butt Rock bands. But I also think that it's interesting with these iconic bands we've been talking about today, with Nirvana, did they give us Nickelback? Rage Against the Machine, did they cause Limp Bizkit? They definitely caused Limp Bizkit.
Isaac, I think we should put a pin in that, wrap this episode, and that's going to be the conversation
to be continued.
for next
yeah,
time.
that's Battle of the Butt Rock bands for sure.
Part 2.
That's a good way to end this cliffhanger.
Yeah, we leave them on a cliffhanger. One more.
No, it was good to go on another tangent about about Pearl Jam and grunge. I think we should every episode just like take a hard left turn back into that subject.
Grunge.
Yeah. Everything comes back to grunge.
I think we know what the name of this episode is going to be.
100% grunge, baby.
100% grunge.
Thank you. We're Hembree. Links in the bio.
Kicking it around.
Music.